находится. Say hello, guys. And they will be presenting two products: process mining, UiPath process mining, and UiPath task capture. We will start with Gerd, and he will be presenting for about 20 minutes UiPath process mining.
All right, thank you very much. So let me start sharing my screen. Okay, so now you should all be seeing my screen correctly. So welcome to this demonstration. And what we're looking at right here is our process mining product. So this product is what we call App 1, and this really contains all of the dashboards to answer the majority of your process questions. So process mining is a technique that's been around for quite a while, but finally businesses are catching up to this technology to really extract the actual process from the data that they have in their source systems. So you can think of an SAP system, an Oracle, you can think about CRM development systems. All these kinds of systems, they leave data behind. So they have these traces, these footprints, which have data points. So these tell us when something happens, they tell us what happens, and also to what documents. So you can think about a process of a purchase to pay process, an order to cash, developing a certain product. You can think about the building of a car, but it could also be the customer service. For instance, a telephone service center. What we're looking at right here, this is a demo data set which contains an invoice approval process. So there's a couple of activities which are happening. There's an invoice coming in, it gets approved, and finally it is paid. So I've dived in directly into this product. Right now we're seeing the opening dashboard giving us a couple of statistics, but let me just dive into the heart of process mining, which is actually the process graph. So the process graph is what we see here on the left. And this is, based on the data that we have in this system, it will tell us when certain activities are happening and in what order. So it will tell us that this process has started over here at the receive invoice. And finally, this ended up in this last activity called the pay invoice. So a lot of times when you ask people how their process is going, a lot of times they have a very simple or quite a basic understanding of their process, and they don't fully understand all of the complexities, all of the loops, iterations that can happen. So rather than seeing this process as it actually is, what you see is that a lot of people will view a process such as this. So so this is quite a very straightforward process where you go from receive invoice, having a couple of steps, and finally paying the invoice. And probably if you have some kind of process map out there in your organization, you have a little bit more variation. You have a bit more of these edges, but without having the data, you cannot understand the full complexity of your process. So right now I'm playing with these sliders. What these do is they allow us to go back and forth with the complexity of the process to get a better understanding. And it's to demonstrate to you that process mining will cover more of your process than you would get through any kinds of interviews, any kinds of other deep dives, because this is really driven by the data. So we see this process going from beginning to end, but this also tells us a lot about the order of the activities, about the time between activities. So there's all kinds of analyses that really opens up. So this is something that you could do in a process where you have not a proper understanding of how your process is going, or when you want to see, for instance, the impact of certain changes. You want to see something before and after you implemented RPA. So this could be the start of your RPA journey. It could be implemented during or after, but this is really a continuous loop, continuous improvement of your process, so to say. So in this process, aside from having this process map, which gives us the sequence of activities, we also have a lot of other information. So we know, for instance, who are the suppliers, who are, for instance, the case owners, what kind of types they are. So in that way, we can see any kinds of differences. We can slice and dice data to filter out for a certain case type, for instance. So everything will adjust accordingly, and you can analyze, you can drill down, really down to the deepest level of your process. So what you will be able to see is, not just this aggregated data, but you'll be able to, after you have made your selection, and you want to really get to the nitty-gritty details of that process, you can go over to the details, and this will show you really each individual case. So what this will allow you to do is talk with the people involved, look at the bots who were involved in this process, and identify any improvement opportunities. So these improvement opportunities, they could be automating a specific part of your process, but it could also be purely educating your workforce. It could also involve some process redesign in your source system. So there's a whole range of different solutions that can be applied here after you've spotted improvement opportunities. So we have this process map, and of course we have just this process, but it will become more interesting once we start comparing this. So we'll be able to compare the process not only also over time. So this will allow us to see how the process was going in April and in October. And we see that, for instance, some of these steps, which in this process, there are rework steps. So there have been additional activities which cost the organization time, they costed effort. And we can see here that they have actually been removed from this process. They no longer occur for this selection that we have. Whereas in the past, in April 2019, they did occur. So in this way, you can really stay on top of your improvements and make sure that they also don't happen again. So it's not just a one-time project tool that you can apply once you do the improvements and you're done. This is really something that you embed in your organization to really have this continuous improvement. Furthermore, looking at automation, what we can see is when certain, which activities have been automated, what their automation rate is. So we can look at this from a case perspective. So in this example, that will be the invoices. We could look at which kind of invoices have been more or less automated. Let me just remove this filter and select the case type again. So we can see here that there's a difference in the automation rates of the case types. Furthermore, we can see which activities actually are automated more or less. So we can see here that some of these activities are automated 100%, whereas other ones have actually not been that automated. So this will also give you a lot of insights into where your next automation potential could be, that you shouldn't focus it so much on the receiving of the invoice, but it should rather be on some of these other activities. So this really gives you a very data-driven more scientific approach to your automations to make sure that you're automating the things that make sense, and also reducing or first trimming out the waste of your process so that you don't automate the wrong activities. So one of the examples that we could see here is in the timing dashboard, where, let me just go back to period of May. So in this example data set, what we had before was that after the invoice was received, the processing of the invoice took 9 days. So in this dashboard, we can see all of the throughput times, and the processing of the invoice took 9 days. After implementing automation, what we can see is that this actually leads to some improvements. So we can see, if we keep the focus on this area, we can see that the throughput time is being reduced. And what we see as a result of that is that a next bottleneck appears, which is the final check of invoice. So as we progress through time, we can see that the final check of invoice becomes much more important as our next step. So instead of having a big idea of how all the automation should look like, this can really help you with a stepwise approach to your automations to make sure that you're automating the right activities. And as you see, as we start tackling this final check of invoice, we are reducing the total throughput time of this process. So where this used to be almost a week, we've cut it down to 16 minutes. And this final check of invoice is now also reduced quite significantly. So this throughput time reduction means that customers are paid more on time. So you're meeting your SLAs, you don't have to pay fines. So there's a lot of significant benefits when it comes to this. So finally, you see that, yeah, the process is becoming much more streamlined and much more efficient. So one other thing is, when it comes to these processes, there's all kinds of business rules, business logic that you want to analyze. There could be some specific business rules for a certain department. You could have some SLAs that you want to meet. There could be some segregation of duties that you want to analyze. And all of this can be contained within this analysis. So through the use of tags, we can identify certain business rules. We can specify the condition. And once a condition is met, it will trigger such a tag and will show up in your analysis. So this is especially helpful when doing these kinds of continuous improvements to make sure that your process is actually improving. So in this case, we can see that the SLA violation, it's going down. So if this is your focus area, it means you're doing something good. So in this way, you can really stay on top of your improvements. I'm not sure if I'm over my time now or not. Or shall I just continue?
You should continue. Finish your demo, please.
Okay. So yeah, we have these tags, and these are really a powerful way of making sure that you can unlock the business value in your process and from your organization. So the last part that I want to show is the reference model, which allows you to check whether your model conforms to your actual process. So a lot of times you have an idea about how your process should look like, but you want to make sure that it actually meets that. So that you could either update your model, or you have to do something else. So here we also see that there are some activities which are marked in yellow, which are activities which are not in our standard model, so they are not conforming. And as with any chart, what you'll have is these histories overviews, so that you can identify whether you are becoming more conforming and improving in your process. So this is the deep dive or the demonstration that I would like to show about the process mining platform and all the value that you can unlock with it as your automation journey or for really your process improvement. So now it's over back to the next product.
Thank you very much, Jed. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Jed. Our next product will be presented by Anna Hoca, and it's called Task Capture. Anna, I'm passing the stick to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Just a second, I'll share my screen. So my name is Anna Hoca. I'm product manager for Task Capture. And today I'm going to just present you a couple of slides of general idea of the product and then show you the demo of it itself. Because the product is pretty straightforward and it's actually better to see it in action than hear a lot of times about it. So Task Capture is a process discovery tool that helps you get detailed insights about automation candidates or processes by simply performing your work step by step. And by insights in this context, I mean documentation. It's suitable for business users who have to document their processes, their expertise, and their ideas for automation, and for CEO leaders who have to review and analyze all of the documentation, and then for RPA developers who are actually using the output from Task Capture to start implementing the automation. So what kind of problem does Task Capture solve? Task Capture builds this bridges this gap between subject matter experts, business users at your company, and business analysts who have to analyze documentation by getting the process definition document from Task Capture, and also between RPA developers who get the robot skeleton for UiPath Studio. So now let's see how it actually works. So at this point, let's imagine that I'm subject matter expert from finance department who has this invoice processing and who actually does this invoice processing on monthly basis. And the process itself is pretty clear. I have to calculate the invoice amount and then store the data either in Word format or in Excel. And actually, I know the structure of this process. So when I open Task Capture and I see the options for creating a process with, I should choose Create Diagram, because this one applies for the case when I know the structure of the process, well, when I know that the process contains any branching, and I have to build the process map first and then capture the actual actions. And the second approach, capture process, applies for the cases when the process is linear and I don't know exactly that much about its structure, and I want to capture all of my actions first and then allow Task Capture to build the process map automatically. But now let's choose the first option. So when you choose Create Diagram option, you can see just the empty diagram that contains only start element. And now I want to build my diagram for every part of my process, which is represented in Task Capture by sequences. So as I said, our process contains of calculation actions and then saving the data. So I added this empty sequence element and rename it into calculate the invoice amount. And then I should add the branching of my flow, as I said, because I don't know where I want to store the data, either in Word or in Excel. So I add this business rule element and I rename it into a question, where to store the data. And if the answer is Word, I add another sequence, which represents the actions for saving the data in Word, and another flow for saving the data in Excel. So the answer here is Excel, and the sequence represents actions for saving the data in Excel. And at this point, I assume that everything is done with my process, so I just add end events. And now the process map is ready, and it's time to actually start capturing all of the actions for each sequence. And again, sequence is some kind of subtask of my entire process. So I just click capture actions now and start the recording. But actually, I don't want to record anything in PowerPoint presentation, of course, so I just pause it and hide all the irrelevant data, applications, and instead open the necessary one. And then resume the capturing. So once the capturing is in progress, and I have to perform my actions for this part of my process. For example, just adding some cache in data on UIS check and so on. And as you can see, this small capturing panel was just blinking, which means that task capture generated screenshot for my action. And it's worth to mention at this point that task capture generates screenshot for each mouse click, keyboard inputs, and hotkey events. For example, I just clicked Ctrl+A and Ctrl+C, and screenshot was generated again. Now, I expect that this is everything that I wanted to capture for the calculation sequence, so I stop the capturing process, which brings me back to the application, where I can see the list of all of the actions at the right side. And in case I want to add more details, more annotations for each of them, or maybe even edit a screenshot, I can simply do this by double-clicking on it, which brings me to the action editor page, where I can add the action title, for example, type into cache in value, and also the description. Something, let's imagine dummy information for our demo cache in value is number of months. And it's also important to mention that these values are actually going to be included in the process definition document when we'll generate the Word export for our documentation. So it's worth to add all the titles and descriptions for every action to make the output more informative and more clear for the person who is going to review it later. Besides, I can add I can use any of the tools available here to maybe add some highlights to the screenshot like this, or maybe hide some sensitive information using blur tool like this. Besides, task capture has also inbuilt the OCR technology, which allows you to grab some region at your screenshot and recognize text under this area, and then paste it anywhere you want to, for example, in description. After you perform the same actions, I mean, adding title, description, and editing the screenshot itself, it's actually time to get back to diagram and do the same operation for the rest of sequences. Capture actions for saving data in Excel and capture actions for saving data in Word. But now, I'm not going to actually do this in order not to waste a lot of time for the same things that we just saw. So instead, let's see how you actually can save your results of your work in task capture. For this, you have to go to Export and Publish page, where we can see the two options available. The first one allows us to save our documentation in Word document format. As I said before, it's a process definition document, which is then suitable for analyzing by CUE team and by business analysts. And the second option, UiPath Studio, which allows task capture to actually generate the XAML file, which is a robot skeleton for UiPath Studio. So let's go in details with each of them. When you choose Word document option, you go to document properties page, where you have to provide all of the important details about your process. So, for example, you have to add the title, which is invoice processing in our case, and the description for it. But I'm going to go with something simple and just copy paste the title of it and author name. And again, all of this information is going to be included in our process definition document. So it's important to add here something informative. Let's go next. In this page, template view, we have to choose the templates that we want to use for the process definition document. Task Capture provides you with two default templates. First one, the Automation Hub, and second one, UiPath PDD. But in case you want to create a custom one with your company branding, or maybe remove some information that you don't want, which is included in default templates, you can easily create a custom template. But now let's not focus on it and go with the ones that we have. So choose Automation Hub. Besides, you can also adjust the output options for your images, such as the quality of your image and the image size relative to the page size. But let's just click Export. Okay. And see the results. Good. So we have the process definition document, which includes the title we just provided in Task Capture, description, and table of the contents, which has the as-is process description part that interests us the most. So let's just scroll up a bit, because some of the data in here is predefined and static, but the actual data about process was just filled in by Task Capture. And by this data, I mean the process map that we just created in the application, some statistics about the process, like high-level statistics about number of processes that were recorded, the actions, the action types, and the times that it took to record the process, and also the detailed statistics, like the window names that we were working in, and again, the data about events. And of course, we have the list of all of the actions that we just recorded. Basically, it's a table which includes title, description, estimated time, the screenshot of action, and also the action type. So that's basically it with the process definition document. Let's get back to the application and take a look at the UiPath Studio option. So when we choose UiPath Studio, we just have to indicate the folder where we want to store XAML file and save it. So again, at this point, Task Capture breaches the gap between subject matter expert who just documented their automation idea and RPA developer who has this structure of the idea by getting this XAML file. And let's see what we have in here. So Task Capture just transformed the process map from it into UiPath Studio flowchart activity type, and we have here our process diagram. So let's open calculate the invoice amount sequence and see all of the actions. Of course, we have here the screenshots, the actions type like click, type into, and send hotkey. Also some properties about each activity like the key input that was triggered for the hotkey, the type into text, and so on. And we also have the selector element for this particular activity. But it's also important to remember that Task Capture capturing engine is not the same one as UiPath Studio has. So in some cases, the selectors produced by Task Capture can be different than the ones available in UiPath Studio. So the additional refactoring and debugging by RPA developer is actually required. Yes, so that's it about UiPath Studio export. And another last thing I wanted to mention today is that Task Capture is bundled with another UiPath product, Automation Hub, which is basically a web-based platform for the automation, and it allows to publish this documentation directly to Automation Hub, where your company stores all of the automation ideas and keeps an eye on the automation process inside of it. That's actually everything I wanted to talk with you about today. So please feel free to ask any questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, for taking the time to present this product. The same for you, Gert. Thank you very much for allowing the time to go through this. As per the calendar, we will have a short break if there are no questions, obviously, a short break until the next session starts, which is at, I believe we're on the same time zone, 1 p.m. EEST. So I'm giving you back some time, an extra 20 minutes. When you want to join the next sessions, please go back to the UiPath VLab website. So it's vlab.uipath.com and click join the session, the next session. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm looking forward to the customer stories in the next session.
Thank you. Bye.